Have you ever watched a flame smolder through the night, no screaming, no pleading, no rush, just burning, and somehow in that proud, quiet stillness, every eye is drawn to it, not because it calls, but because it exists. So it is with a woman, when she no longer clings, when she stops chasing the gaze of others. In that precise moment, she becomes radiant. That's when a man begins to remember, though he doesn't know why. He remembers a look that is turned away, a breath no longer meant for him. He remembers something, ancient, sacred, and beyond words. This is not a tactic, not a dating tip or a psychological game. It is the expression of a force deep in the human psyche, a force Carl Jung called the shadow, the collective unconscious, where ancient archetypes shape the way we love, leave, and return to ourselves. When a woman withdraws from the game of romance, it's not because she has stopped loving. It's because she has remembered who she is. She steps back not to be pursued, but to hear the echo within. In that moment, she no longer needs love to feel whole, and it is from that place that true love begins to seek her. The man, though he cannot name the feeling, is pulled like the tides are pulled by the moon. For deep within the male psyche lies a longing, ancient and silent, not for dependency, but for encounter, not for possession, but for witnessing. And the sovereign woman is an invitation not spoken aloud, yet echoing endlessly in his mind. So what is truly happening in the psyche of such a woman? Why does her retreat draw him closer? And where is the line between true sovereignty and the fearful illusion of detachment? In the next part, we'll step into an inner world, what Carl Jung called individuation, the soul's journey back to itself. There you will not only understand why a woman becomes magnetic when she stops trying, but begin to see yourself more clearly, the hidden parts within you that have long been waiting to be seen. Stay with this, because what you're about to discover might not only change how you see love, but touch the very core of what it means to be human. Have you ever wondered, when a woman begins to pull away, is it because she no longer loves, or because she's beginning to remember who she is? In the depths of Jungian psychology, every healing journey begins with one essential movement, a step away from identification with the persona, the mask we wear since childhood, to be loved, to be just right, to never disappoint. For women, this persona often takes the form of the good girl, the perfect partner, the one who always sacrifices for others. And in wearing that mask for too long, she forgets the true face beneath it. So when she takes a step back, it's not manipulation, it's not a strategy. It's her soul listening more closely to an inner voice, a quiet but persistent whisper. Something in the way I'm living doesn't feel true. But in the age of social media, keywords like detachment, alpha feminine, and divine energy quickly become tactics. Many women try to appear indifferent, go silent, pretend they need no one, hoping it will make others chase them. But that's not detachment. That's just another persona now dressed in sacred robes. Once again, she is not living from her truth, but performing a new role. True detachment, or what Jung would call inner withdrawal, is the act of the soul pulling its energy away from old forms, not to disappear, but to return home to herself. And this moment usually arrives after she's exhausted herself trying to hold on to love. She begins to realize true love cannot be manipulated. The one who stayed will stay, and the one who leaves no longer takes any part of her with them. And from this place, the fear of abandonment begins to dissolve. Not because she's become harder, but because she starts to see the psychological roots beneath her reactions. She sees the inner child once gasping just to be seen. And instead of blaming someone for not replying to her message, she gently whispers to herself, "I'm here. I see you." This is when the true journey of individuation begins. Not "I want him to love me," but "I want to live in truth with myself." If you've ever stood at that edge or are standing there now, share in the comments. Have you ever used detachment as a tactic rather than a true process? What made you begin to question the role you've been playing for too long? We need to hear these stories, because when one woman speaks her truth, it's not just her awakening, it is the collective soul of the feminine stirring. In the next part, we'll go deeper into a tool Jung called a sacred doorway into the inner world dreams and the technique of active imagination. Because it's not logic, not reason, but images and symbols that are the native language of the unconscious. And if you're ready to walk through that doorway where the broken parts of you are waiting to be heard, then come with me. What you've called disorder may simply be the soul's language untranslated. And together we'll begin to translate it, one image at a time. There is a quiet moment in a woman's soul that the outside world will never see. A moment that doesn't show up on social media, doesn't fit into inspirational quotes, and can't be labeled self-love. It's the moment she looks in the mirror and no longer recognizes herself. Not because her hair is messy or her eyes look tired, but because her soul has wandered off. She has lived right, met expectations, fit the mold. She knows how to text not too fast, not too slow. She knows when to hold back her words so she won't be seen as too emotional. But the more right she becomes, the further she feels from herself, from truth, from something she could name, only hear whispering in her dreams, "Come home." Carl Jung called this process individuation, the journey of stepping away from all the roles society handed us to return to the untouched self beneath them all. But this journey doesn't begin with light. It begins with a crack, a sense of disorientation, a breakup without a clear reason, a recurring dream of a dark room, a locked door, or a faceless man who makes her heart ache. You see, dreams aren't just random images in the night. To Jung, they are letters from the soul, messages from the unlived parts within us trying to reach us. The woman returning to herself begins to dream more. Her dreams speak in symbols, waterfire doors, staircases, darkness, wild animals. This is the language of the soul. This is when she stops following the noise of the outer world and begins to step into the sacred terrain of the unconscious. And if dreams are letters, then active imagination is how she begins to write back. On a quiet afternoon, instead of scrolling through her phone to numb the ache, she sits down, closes her eyes, and calls back the image from the night before the old wooden door. And she asks, "Why do you keep appearing to me?" She doesn't try to analyze, she listens. She speaks to the image in her mind, and something strange begins to happen. The locked door inside her soul slowly begins to open. You see, when a woman steps out of the sweet girl persona, she doesn't become some cold, hardened boss babe. She becomes the one brave enough to walk into the dark and gather the forgotten pieces of her soul. The little girl who was dismissed for talking too much. The young woman who loved deeply and was never loved back. The one who gave everything in the name of love, only to find herself disappearing. She doesn't run anymore. She sits with the pain, with the dream, with the image. She begins to see herself not through anyone else's eyes, but through the lens of her own awakened mind. And the most beautiful thing is this: when she stops trying to be seen, her light begins to shine. Not like a blazing fire begging for applause, but like a candle in a quiet room, soft, steady, warm. In that space, a manif, he's deep enough, will feel it. Not through her words, not through her looks, but through the field of a soul that was once lost and has now come home. If you are a woman walking this path, I want you to know you are not alone. There is an entire collective awakening, a quiet revolution of women shedding their masks, hearts learning to love themselves without needing proof. If you see yourself in these words, leave a comment. Share a dream you've had, a moment when you realized you no longer wanted to be the good girl. Because in those stories, we don't just heal, we connect. And if you feel like you're beginning to remember yourself, then in the next part, we'll take you deeper into the map of the unconscious, where Jung charted the symbols of the soul, where archetypes like the Anima, the shadow, and the self are no longer theory, but companions on your journey toward becoming fully, truly yourself. This path doesn't promise instant happiness, but it promises something far greater: truth. And truth has its own kind of magnetism. How many times have you secretly thought, "Hess, my destiny"? It sounds like a cosmic love song, like the universe etched his name into your heart. But pause, breathe. Ask yourself, are you sure it's him, or is it a part of you, long dormant, that's just been awakened? Carl Jung called this projection a process where the unconscious mind casts outward images of what lies unlived, unknown, and unloved within ourselves. And often that mirror shows up in the form of someone who enters just as your heart feels most empty. Picture a woman fresh out of a painful relationship. She meets a man, gentle, emotionally aware eyes that seem to understand. After only a few conversations, she feels like she's known him forever. She says, "I can't explain it, but something about him feels like home." The truth, though, hard to hear, is this: she's not in love with him. She's in love with the feeling of safety she's never had. He merely touched the door to that place, and her soul rushed out, calling him destiny. Jung once wrote, "We do not fall in love with others as they are, but with the parts of our own shadow mirrored through them. Projection is how the psyche reaches for wholeness. But ironically, when you place on someone the image of the one who will complete me, you're not falling in love. You're losing yourself again. And then what happens when that person stops fulfilling the fantasy? You feel hurt. You say he's changed. You ask him to be more like before. But the truth is, he never was. He didn't betray you. You simply woke up from your own dream. That painful moment is the beginning of withdrawal, the reclaiming of your projection. It's not the end of love, but the end of illusion. It's seeing the other as they are, and more importantly, returning to the parts of yourself you had projected outward. The gentleness you saw in him was a call to be gentle with yourself. The sense of safety was a cry from the wounded parts of you asking to be healed. You see, projection in a mistake, it's instinct. But when you recognize you're projecting, you gain a choice. No longer trapped in a fairy tale, you begin to live love as it is raw, real tender, flawed. And here's the miracle: when you withdraw the illusion, real love has space to breathe. No pressure, no expectation to be saved. Just two people facing each other and choosing one another, not from lack, but from willingness to walk the path together. If you've been through this, if you've poured your heart into someone only to realize you were in love with an image, not a person, share your story. Write a short reflection. Whisper something in the comments, because someone else may be caught in the same dream, and your truth might be their awakening. And if you're asking yourself, how do I know when I'm projecting? In the next part, we'll explore the Jungian archetypes of Anima and Animus, the inner feminine and masculine energies that often lead the dance of romantic projection. You'll begin to understand why women fall too fast and why men pull away when it gets deep. Not because something's wrong with them, but because within each an archetype is whispering, "I'm not whole yet." This journey won't just change the way you love, it will change the way you see yourself. And that is what Jung called a soul encounter. There is a woman who no longer breaks down when she's left behind. Not because her heart has grown cold, but because she has finally stopped tying her existence to someone else. She still feels sadness, of course, but it no longer sweeps her away like the tide. It knocks gently and she welcomes it like a guest, then lets it go when it's time. This is the first sign of a psychologically sovereign woman. Not someone who doesn't need or love anyone, but someone who remembers I cannot be lost just because someone leaves. You'll notice that she doesn't obsessively check her phone. She doesn't send him fine texts with a lump in her throat. She doesn't use silence as a weapon, but as a sanctuary, because she's learned that emotions are not defined by reaction, but by the ability to stay present with herself through them. She sets boundaries, not to control, but to preserve. And when someone crosses them, she doesn't lash out to make a point, she simply steps back. Like the ocean, which never needs to roar to prove its depth. She doesn't test people's loyalty. She doesn't wait for them to change, because she understands if someone cannot show respect from the beginning, no amount of effort will awaken it later. And that which may sound cold is actually the highest form of love. It says, I love you, but I will not abandon myself to keep you. She doesn't turn loneliness into late-night calls. She doesn't use sex to fill the emptiness. She doesn't sacrifice her soul to keep someone else happy, then secretly resent them for it. A sovereign woman can love deeply, but she will never betray herself to be loved back. And from that place, she radiates a rare energy, the magnetic field of wholeness. You may have met her, the woman who doesn't rush to be seen, yet somehow everyone turns to look. The woman who never says, respect me, because her presence inspires respect without a word. If you are learning to become her, know this: it is not a destination, it is a process, one step at a time, one wound at a time, one quiet victory at a time, and you don't have to walk it alone. We're building a community of women like you who are learning to step out of the roles of love-based dependency and into the center of their own lives. If you see yourself in these words, share something. A boundary you've recently set. A moment when you chose yourself instead of chasing someone. A truth you've just learned to name. And if you're wondering, am I sovereign enough yet? The next part won't give you a checklist, but an image. A woman walks into a room where the man she once loved deeply is standing. But this time her heart doesn't panic. It stands firm like a rooted tree. Because when you've returned to your own center, another's presence no longer defines your worth. It simply reflects how far you've come home to yourself. And in that moment, you don't need anyone to tell you. You know in the deepest, calmest way that you've begun to love from within. There was a time when a woman was not called lover, mother, or wife. She was called goddess, not because she held supernatural powers, but because she embodied a sacred dimension of the human soul, a depth so profound that every ancient culture once trembled before it. Aphrodite, not just the goddess of love and beauty, but the embodiment of raw aliveness of unforced passion. Isis, symbol of wisdom and protection, able to resurrect the one she loves without losing herself. Sophia, the goddess of divine wisdom, the light within the darkness of the unconscious, the whisper of intuition amidst the noise of reason. When a woman steps into deep sovereignty, she is no longer someone learning how to love, she becomes a living archetype of those divine forces. She doesn't try to attract, she is a field of energy. She doesn't seek validation, her very presence is a sacred ritual. And a man feels this, not through her words but through instinct. He doesn't just see a woman. He feels as though he's standing at a threshold, a gateway into depths he too has forgotten. In that moment, the relationship stops being a game of who needs who more and becomes a sacred ritual of meeting. It's no longer about does she make me happy, but rather do I have the courage to face my own shadow in her presence? Because the woman who has stepped into her goddess state is no longer a seeker of love. She is a summoner. Her presence exposes anything false within the relationship. She doesn't need to criticize, her gaze alone becomes a mirror. She doesn't need to teach love, her wholeness becomes the deepest invitation. Grow up. Love me with the depth you've long forgotten within yourself. This is not an idealized image. This is a psychological reality, a level anyone can reach when they begin the journey back to themselves. And when more and more women enter this state, what transforms is not just personal relationships, but the very structure of society, our beliefs, and the way humans connect. So if you're standing at the threshold of your awakening, if you feel something stirring inside, calling you, don't push it away. Write it down. Speak it. Share your truth in the comments. Have you ever felt yourself as Aphrodite, Sophia, or Isis? What scares you most about standing fully in your own power? Because every share isn't just a personal story, it's a flame path to another. We do not walk this path alone. And maybe your words today will awaken someone who forgot that they too are made of light. And if you're asking yourself, once I've entered this depth, do I still need love? Then in the final part of this series, we'll explore one of the most beautiful paradoxes in Jungian psychology. When you no longer need love, that's when true love finds you. Not as a reward, but as a mirror of the wholeness you've become. See you at the end, where truth and love no longer stand apart but merge as one. Some journeys begin without a send-off. No drums, no map, no one waving goodbye. They begin quietly in the middle of a long night, a strange dream, or a still moment when tears fall for no one in particular. That's when your soul speaks, soft as wind, but impossible to ignore. The journey back to the self, as Carl Jung once said, is not about becoming better, it's about becoming whole. Not to be loved by others, but to look into your own eyes and whisper, this is who I truly am. You don't need to become anyone else. You don't need to strive to be good enough to be kept. Because if love demands you abandon yourself, it's only borrowing you, not building a home. And it is precisely when you stop running that what is truly meant for you will find you. Not because you're perfect, but because you have come home. Did something inside you shift after watching this? Maybe just a flicker of a thought, a quiet feeling that says, I've forgotten something important. Write it down in the comments. I and others on this same path will be listening. What part of this video reflected something deep within you? Where are you right now on the journey of becoming a whole woman? Because your comment is not just a line of text, it's a marker on your path back to yourself. If this video touched you, leave a sign, like a subscribe, or simply send it to someone you know needs it. Not for the numbers, but for the resonance. We live in a world that teaches women how to be loved, but forgets to teach them how to love themselves. If you're ready to walk the other way, into the dark, into the light, into yourself, then you are no longer alone. Hold this phrase close like a gentle reminder. You don't need to be seen to know you are shining. Your light is yours, and you don't have to prove it to anyone. Thank you for showing up, for listening, and for being real. See you in the next video, where we'll keep diving deeper into the soul, where what once felt fragile is revealed to be your root. And who knows, maybe what you've been searching for out there is the very part of you you left behind in a dream. Let's go find it together.